there, and welcome back to another episode of Sit and Spin with me, your host, Joe Royland. Non-shaven. One of the beauties of not working right now is that I can be lazy and I don't have to shave. Now, last week, we were talking about how we were going to stick with Michigan band for this week's show, and sure enough, we are, with the return of the Verve Pipe and their new album, Parachute. I even dug out a vintage t-shirt for this one. Oh God, it's huge on me now. First, a little history on the band, in case you forgot who the Verve Pipe were. The band started out in 1992 from the joining of two rival bands in the East Lansing, Michigan area, around the nexus of singer-songwriter guitarist Brian Vander Ark, drummer-songwriter Johnny Brown, and original guitarist Brian Stout. The rest of the band was filled out by Brian Vander Ark's younger brother Brad Vander Ark on bass and keyboardist Doug Corella. They released their debut indie album, I've Suffered a Head Injury, in 1992 on the group's own Elemental Pop Records, and followed that up in 1993 with the album Pop Smear, which Brian Stout was then replaced by guitarist A.J. Dunning. They built up enough of a local buzz and a following in the Michigan and surrounding lakes region through touring that they sold over 40,000 copies of their first two albums and landed a major label deal with RCA Records in 1995. The band broke through to national attention in 1996 with their release of their major label debut, Villains, which went on to platinum sales based on the success of radio video hits like Photograph, Cup of Tea, the album's title track, but most especially the top 5 Billboard hit, The Freshman. Now, this is pretty much where I kind of came on board with the band, although just a little bit earlier. I first discovered them through their appearance on the 1995 XTC tribute album, A Testimonial Dinner, where they did a cover of the song Wake Up. And I first saw them live on a snowy Saturday night in January of 1996, a couple months before Villains was released. They were on tour with Eves Plum opening for them, and where I kind of like the song they'd done on the Testimonial Dinner, even though, you know, it was a crappy weather night, we went out with some friends and we went and caught the show, and they put on an amazing show to a very small crowd of maybe 30 people tops considering the weather, but they played like it was a full house, and just really great show. And I still remember, after the first time we heard them play The Freshman, my friends and I just sitting there with our mouths agape looking at each other like, wow, that song was amazing. After the show, we went up, we met the guys. They're very personable, really cool dudes. And so it was very much forward-looking to Villains when it came out, and being produced by Talking Heads' Jerry Harrison didn't disappoint. Great record, one of my favorites from that year, one of my favorite albums from the 90s. Definitely needs a vinyl reissue, as do most of their records. And when The Freshman first came out, I have to say that if you have this album, hopefully you have the original version of the album. Subsequent reissues of the record have a little RE standing for reissue somewhere on the back, and feature a different mix of The Freshman. When that song got released as a single, the original version is a little bit longer. The record company said we need a little bit more pop-friendly edit of the song, so they redid a version of it, which to me sapped most of the haunting beauty right out of it. And I think in its original, for Villains at least, Spartan form, the song is much better served. And originally, actually, the song dates back further. It actually goes back to the original versions of I've Suffered a Head Injury, but it was taken off that record when RCA Records re-released that album and Pop Smear as part of the success of Villains taking off and becoming a hit record. Now, the band went out and toured for a couple of years behind that record, and it took a long time where they spent a little too much time and a whole bunch of money recording the artier follow-up release, which was the self-titled The Verve Pipe, or sometimes this is referred to as the Frog album, in 1999. Now, this album featured the single and video Hero, which, while a really catchy number and one of my favorite tracks, made it to being a top 15 hit on the Billboard Modern Rock charts. But unfortunately, with the shifting musical tides at alt-rock radio at the time and the sound of nu metal coming in, the record got a bit lost in the shuffle of bands like Korn and Limp Bizkit becoming more popular. Now, it's still a great record full of a lot of great tunes, but it really just kind of got overlooked, and the band had to kind of go it alone and hope for the best with their next record, which didn't come out until 2001, and that was the awesome Underneath, which was produced by Adam Schlesinger of Fountains of Wayne and Ivy, who also just did the new Monkees record, Good Times, last year. And song for song, I still think this is their overall strongest record. A lot of great cuts on this, but yet, despite that, and the many great songs on the record like Miles Away and the title track, And songs like Never Let Me Down, which was the first single, being one of the top 50 most played modern rock tracks of 2001. And further with cuts like Colorful being featured in and on the soundtrack to the movie Rockstar. And Brian Vander Ark also has a small role in that movie. And the song like Happiness Is being featured in the movie So Joe Somebody, and cuts like I Want All of You featured in TV shows like Roswell at the time. The album just kind of, it failed to catch on. It didn't do the sales numbers that they were hoping for. And another thing that kind of hurt the record was that in the wake of the 9/11 tragedy, which is right around the time the album was reissued, a lot of great records that were issued around that same point just kind of got not the attention they deserved, because admittedly people's minds were on other things, and so again the record kind of got lost in the shuffle of things. And following the disappointing returns for that, the band took an 8-year hiatus in which lead singer Brian Vander Ark started a solo career, first releasing his first album Resurrection, I believe it was in 2003, couldn't remember, which was great stuff, and he continued releasing a string of solo albums and did pretty well. But overall the band just wasn't doing much. He was doing like house concert stuff. They reunited in 2009 at the request to contribute a track to a children's collection of rock children's songs, and through recording the song from that, it proved so rewarding that they decided, hey, let's just do a whole album of children's songs, because children's music is actually kind of a pretty lucrative field, believe it or not. And so a family album was released in 2009, and it did well enough that the band decided that they were going to follow it up with another kids music compilation record. Not compilation, but another kids music album called Are We There Yet, which was released in 2013. Now, between the first and the second kids music album theme, a lot of the original band members left, leaving Brian Vander Ark the sole remaining member of the band. So he went out, got himself a new band to tour behind him, and also around the same time he decided that he wanted to kind of get back to making rock music. So with new group members Lou Musa on guitar and vocals, Joel Ferguson on on bass, guitars, keyboards and vocals, Randy Sly on keyboards, God I can't talk tonight, and originally first Scott Stefanski on drums, but later Sam Briggs, and backing vocalist Channing Lee and Greg Griffin, who also played harmonica. They set about making what would be their 2014 release, Overboard, which was their return to rock. Now, while that was a nice record, and even though it contained songwriting contributions from the band's new members, it still felt more like a Brian Vander Ark solo album to me. It didn't feel like a Verve Pipe album, and didn't quite rock as much as I hoped it would. But jump to a couple of years later, and the band started recording much of what would be the group's 9th studio effort overall, and that being Parachute. Now, many of the songs for this album were first released in the latter half of 2016 as a series of digital singles, which kind of helped putting those out and releasing those songs individually for sale, kind of helped fund making this record. And they were able to finish it up to have a solid 10-track album that we now have, which is Parachute. Now, as much as Overboard didn't feel like a Verve Pipe album, Parachute very much does so. Especially, it feels like to me like it picks up right where Underneath left off, especially the more mellow aspects of that record. Now, while it may lack for some of the crunchier aspects of their earlier work, this is also a very different band. You know, for all intents and purposes, it is a different band making this record. But also, you got people, Brian Vander Ark is older, and he's approaching music from an older perspective. Like, everybody has kids now. But that doesn't mean that the album lacks for dynamics and that it doesn't rock, because it certainly does, especially where it needs to very nicely, as you've heard from some of the tracks that I've already played. And overall, the band maintains their sound of depth, imaginative arrangements, layered musical and vocal harmony parts, and just great songwriting overall. The album kicks off with the driving album opener, I Can't Get You Off of My Mind, which was co-written by Brian Vander Ark and bassist Joel Ferguson, who had some really tasty bass parts to the song in general. And the cut sounds like classic Verve Pipe to me, and just features the band firing on all cylinders. Just a great song, great way to open the album. Next up is the mood shifting. It's the little things which features some nice interweaving vocal lines courtesy of co-songwriter Channing Lee, who is the secret weapon vocally, especially on a lot of this record. That's followed by the track you're hearing right now, If I Could Make You Feel, which is a beautiful power ballad-esque number along the lines of Colorful but taken to the next level. Again, features impassioned lead vocals from Brian Vander Ark and an amazing instrumental vocal arrangement where everything just comes in just so and perfectly placed as far as the arrangement. To me, it's like amazing that this song isn't a massive hit already, and it just needs like the right movie soundtrack or something to elevate it up and get it there. I can't believe the song isn't all over radio right now, but that just shows you the sad state of radio these days. But a great track. Next up on the album is Somebody Someday, which is another driving rocker with sweeping stylistic changes and lyrics from the song protagonist's point of view of wanting to get out of small town life and on to bigger and better things. The track which follows it, which is the ballad Wallflowers, but its ambient leaning, feels almost very much lyrically like it's the flip side of the same coin of Somebody Someday, whereas that tune seems to be more from the point of view of a boy in a relationship. Wallflower takes its viewpoint from the girl in the relationship, this time being a very shy girlfriend who is thrown into the similar situation of moving along with a boy into the bigger life, but she's trying to figure out where she fits into it. The album's second half kicks off with a psychedelic Beatlesque number, The Final Line, which was written by keyboardist Randy Sly. Said your name right this time. It's another winning track, which is not so surprising inspirationally, considering this is a band known for doing both Strawberry Fields Forever and I Am the Walrus, usually as encores back in the earlier days. And it also features a really nice guitar solo from Lou Musa. From there, through most of the record's remaining tracks, things kind of mellow out a little bit more. First with a haunting number, Nothing Like Your Love, which features some nice finger-picking guitar work, a sweet harmony vocals, again Channing Lee, and a trumpet solo, of all things, from guest Mark Brierly. A Favorite Son is another mid-tempo track, co-written by Lou Musa with Brian Vander Ark, again with some ambient overtones, and that's followed by another album highlight in the song Grieve for the Girl That You Once Were, which, while it's mostly another moody, sort of melancholic track, features some really nice stylistic changes and shifts. There's a cool, overdriven electric piano part, some nice acoustic and electric guitar lines, as well as great vocals again, becoming almost a psychedelic type number again by the end of the song's track. And the album closes on the Spartan ballad Love Isn't Love, again with the longing and passion vocals from Brian Vander Ark over simple piano lines and acoustic guitar parts and harmony vocals that kind of builds a bit climactically to the song's finish. But overall, another solid return to form from the Verve Pipe. If you maybe, like me, were maybe a little disappointed and overboard, you didn't even know the Verve Pipe was still around making music at all, urge you to go out and check out the band's new album, Parachute. Might be a little bit more adult contemporary than their 90s work, but doesn't suffer for it one bit. It's just a solid, really masterfully made album. Glad to have them still around. Hopefully they're going to tour out. Right now they just seem to be mostly touring through the Midwest, but hopefully they'll expand their touring radius a little bit, because I would love to have a chance to see them again live. But great record. You can pick it up at your local store or through the band's website. It's available on CD and vinyl. I opted, of course, for the vinyl whenever that's available, especially since it came on this really sweet purple colored vinyl, which sounds great. It's a nice gatefold album cover, and just a solid release overall. And that's the show for this week. Ran a little long again this time. From here on out, got some more new releases to cover, as well as a classic reissue that just came out, and a upcoming not only music review but book review as well from somebody's book that's just coming out next week. I'm very interested in reading a member of one of my favorite bands of all time. You'll have to stick around in the coming weeks to see what all those things are going to be. But thanks for tuning in and catching us now, when we will catch you next time on Sit and Spin. See you then.